before we get started, Todd will eventually join us on an electronic meeting, we don't have to do anything with that during the work session, but we'll do it again during the regular meeting. He's out of town on business. I want to welcome the three newly elected council members, Dwight, David, and Jai, and congratulations. Look forward to working with these guys here as some of us go away. So good luck to you, and thank you for your willingness to serve the community and be a part of moving this great little community forward. So congratulations, and then the second part, the first part, we got our auditor here is going to present kind of our audit to us, and then the second part we're just kind of, it's not really any deep discussion. It's just a lot of topics that are kind of out there that we wanted to kind of make you all aware. Bart will kind of hit the topics. We may chime in if you've got kind of a general question. There's no decision making on any of that stuff tonight. It's just more of a kind of a transition thing to help y'all kind of know some of the things that are out there that still going to need some decisioning on going into next year. So with that, Bart, you want to introduce, or Ann, you want to introduce our auditor here, and we'll go over our financial report.
He can do it himself.
I do it
myself. I like doing that.
Graduate of the Polytechnic
He's been up in front of us so many times.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, thanks for having me. Good to see some new council members. I'm Chris Banta. I'm the audit partner on the financial statement audit, and I'm with Brown Edwards and Company. So, great to see everybody. What we're going to do today, as required by state code, is go over the audit results. We're going to go at a pretty high level, a little different than sitting around a table, so I probably won't just go through all the pages like I usually do, but really just talk in a more narrative discussion format about the results of the audit as a whole. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Ann and Crystal for getting us here. Huge process, and I always like to give her a pat on the back that this is the first locality audit presentation I do, and this has been done for a couple of weeks, basically. Really, so I mean, the town's always been really good about getting us everything we need, getting it done, put it to bed, and we move on, and then we come back here. But this is literally the first of many council or board meetings I'm going to be doing over the next month and a half. But it's nice to get this done in November. So, but it is the culmination of a really long process. We start our planning back in April, scheduling, reaching out to clients, having internal meetings to talk about what's going on in local government finance, what's going on economically in the United States, how does that impact each of our cities or towns or counties, what are we seeing, and how do we think that's going to impact our audit? Because every year there's something different with the audit. One good thing this year is there were no new financial accounting standards for governments. So if you think about some of those detailed discussions we've had over the last couple of years about how the new accounting for leases or accounting for those software packages or the change in pension, just thinking about all those drastic changes over the last decade when it comes to financial statements for governments and how big these have gotten. This year we caught our breath. And that doesn't mean they're done, because there's some new standards coming that are going to make things not as pleasant to look at, probably, in my opinion, just getting bigger, more complex. But this year, nothing really super exciting from that standpoint to implement, which was great. But one thing too I want to emphasize too, I mean, for those, I don't know how many times you all looked at the act for the town, but it's a big document, so it's hard to go over that much detail here. But if you have any questions today, tomorrow, or as you digest this document over the next upcoming months, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy. This is the stuff we like to do when it comes to work, but we're happy to talk about this stuff versus a lot of other things we have to deal with. So, going to go over some of the high-level details. First of all, the primary reason that you engage us as independent auditors is to give you an independent CPA opinion on your financial statements. And that opinion is aimed at telling you whether your financial statements are materially correct. And happy to report that you received an unqualified opinion on your financial statements. So that's the highest level of assurance that we can give to a set of audited financial statements. So with the town, we start every year with the expectation that we're going to get there. That's just based on historical experience, but I always emphasize to councils, boards, don't take it for granted because things can happen. I have clients where I can't get to a clean opinion, but I'm happy to say that, once again, a clean opinion on the town's financial statements. Just talk a few things about some of the items that, when I look at these for the first time in a couple of weeks, a few things that really jump out at me that you might be on your mind. You might remember some things that you read about. You still have about $3.2 million of unearned ARPA money. That's still out there. That's showing up on your governmental activities financial statements as unearned revenue. You still have, I think it's another, 15 months to spend that. So there's still some time to commit that, to spend that, but that's still sitting on your balance sheet. And I think you got that going on 2.5 years ago, I think now. So, but that is one of the larger line items you'll see there. One thing that I will point out too is that you do have positive net position overall for both your governmental activities and your business type activities. And when I say governmental activities, I'm talking about the general government, public safety, public works, providing the services to your citizens that they pay taxes for. Overall, you have positive net position there. Your business type activities, your electric, your solid waste, they also had positive net position this year. So overall, you want to see that. I'll drill down briefly into some of the components of that shortly. Another reminder too about your financial statements is that it not only includes the town, which is the general government activities and your business type activities, but there are two component units for the town with a little bit of activity. It's the EDA and the Housing Authority. And they were created about 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, but they are included in your balance sheet as a separate line item. And it's just so when you see that, they're called component units. You'll see that, and if you're like, what is that? That's what that is. You may track them internally in your accounting software as part of what you're doing here as council, but for our purposes, it's a separate set of financial statements that you see a separate column for. So from our standpoint, there's a few things also when it comes to your finances that are very important as council, is to step back and say, how did we do from our legally adopted budget compared to our actual for our general fund? Happy to report that your revenues were under budget, but that's only because you didn't spend or didn't receive and spend as much grants as you were expecting. And expenditures also as a whole were also under budget by about $12 million. But if you really back out, those two fluctuations are all related to grant, you didn't spend as much grant money as you expected. So, but happy to report legal compliance with your budget. For your business type activities, there's been a hot button item that we've talked about for a number of years related to the fact that electric always has positive results from a net position operating standpoint, but solid waste has historically not. And we've talked about that for a number of years. Is that fund self-sufficient? Are your revenues paying for your expenses? And this is the, I think, first year that I've been talking to you that solid waste had a little bit of profit, meaning it paid for itself this year. Now, that's an accounting basis. There's some of that's timing, some of it's based on expenses that were accrued versus spent. But also from a cash flow standpoint, if you look at the cash flow statement, it made $6, meaning that it paid for itself this year. And that's the first time in a while that we've seen that. So some of those actions that have been taken over the years have gotten us to the point where we're actually talking about that fund self-sustaining itself. So. The financial statements are, do someone have a question? Okay. The financial statements themselves are pretty complex, but following the financial statements, there's about 50 or 60 pages of footnotes. Just happy to report that once again, there's nothing new there. It's just more discussion, more updates on your pension, your post-retirement benefits, all those detailed liability footnotes, your fixed asset activity, just a lot more information that supports the financial statements themselves, but there's no new notes. Nothing really exciting per se to dive into this year compared to most years. So that's the results of the audit of the financial statements. Because you're a government, we are required to perform our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. Those standards are a separate set of standards that we have to follow to perform all financial statement audits of local governments, where we're required to take a deeper dive into your financial statements, from an operational standpoint, looking at your internal controls, what have you designed internally to prevent or detect fraud or to prevent or detect errors in your financial statements? We have to understand the design of that. Have you set policies and procedures that on paper are going to protect the town? If we have issues when we're looking at those, we have to report those as what's called a significant deficiency or material weakness. We also have to evaluate whether has it been designed properly, but is it also operating effectively? Meaning, you told us you're doing this. Have we been able to verify that maybe through walking through one transaction, we see that there are proper purchase orders, or there is a approval process for disbursements or payroll? Similar to the design, we want to make sure that they are operating effectively, not from a full-blown internal control test, but just be able to verify that what you told us is accurate. Similar to that, if there are problems in that testing, we have to report those as findings to you as a significant deficiency or material weakness. And happy to report that there were no control findings this year at all. So, the Auditor of Public Accounts for Virginia also gives us a separate compliance supplement. This compliance supplement is like 100 pages long, has a number of non-financial type items that we have to look at, whether it be that you filed your disclosure statements on time, or have you been paying, submitting all of your census data for the VRS, your pension liability, accurately, tests like that. The one item that we did look at, that we did have an immaterial finding on, was related to the budget, but it was not a very significant item, right? So that's the second phase of our audit. The third phase of our audit is the fact that you did have $1.2 million of federal expenditures this year. All of that, or the majority of that, relates to the ARPA funding that you received a number of years ago. You're spending that, you're passing that through now. Because you have spent that money, and because it was over $750,000, we have to perform an additional audit called a federal single audit. And that audit is a hyper-focused audit just on that federal program. Are you spending it properly? Or do you have processes and procedures to make sure that you're spending it properly? Are you making sure that if you pass it on to someone, are you passing it on to them, and are they spending it properly? Are you making sure? Are you monitoring them? We have to test those controls, your processes, and test compliance with the federal regulations. It's very focused just on that grant. It's not just, is it an expenditure line on your financial statements? But I'm happy to report that we had no findings from an internal control standpoint or a compliance standpoint there. When you're looking at the financial statements too, I'll just mention that if you want to just summarize everything I just spoke about, there's a page in the back of the document called a Schedule of Findings and Question Cost. That is just really the report card that really just enumerates everything I just spoke about, so you can flip right to that and just see the same results that I spoke to about. And an electronic version of that will be uploaded to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse along with your financial statements, so that the public has access to your financials. Second item I'll talk about is the fact that as part of our audit, we're always looking with a cold set of eyes. We always have new staff looking at the job. We have new transactions. We have new things going on. And we look at those for best practices, for things that may not rise to the severity they need to be in the act for itself, the big financial statements, but we look for best practices and maybe some immaterial internal control findings. And we use what's called a management letter as a means to provide you some commentary on that. And if you go back the last decade or so, there's always been something. I think there were some inventory issues a number of years ago. We start to see those go away. But I'm happy to report this is the first, we have no new comments this year. So that's, I want to commend your team on that, because I have clients where they may have an internal control letter that's huge, and they decide, thanks, but we're not going to put the time in to fix that. But the town has always done a good job of whittling away at comments we've had over the years. And like I said, going back 10 years ago, there are not some items there, and slowly over time we've seen those go away. And to go into this year and not have any new comments is really, really, really good for your team.
And that was that dual control item, I think, was the last kind of item that kind of was hanging out there, that's gone away now, correct?
I think so.
Good job, Andy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you just see some clients just don't want to put the time and money and effort to that. But yeah, I don't even have the prior comments in here because
I think that was the only one that Andy had let us know that was going away. So that's good.
And we probably had some best practices. One thing we do is we do a deep dive with some IT specialists, because information technology is the backbone of financial reporting now. So we have certified information systems auditors who spend a little bit of time looking at some questionnaires that we give to management, and occasionally there's some best practices, things like that, but nothing that's considered a control finding that rises up in here. So the last phase, we talked about results. We talked about the fact that you have a clean opinion on your financial statements. We talked about no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses. We talked about a clean federal audit, and that's great. And most audits can get to a clean opinion. The one thing that I'm required to communicate to you is, was that process from the inception of the audit to the point I'm at here today giving you a clean opinion, are there things that you need to know? And some of those things might be significant audit adjustments. Sometimes we get a set of financial statements from our client, and there's errors all over the place, and we have to clean those up to get you to that clean opinion, because that's something we can do as auditors. Sometimes there's disagreements with management. Sometimes there are situations where management might say, you know what, Brown Edwards, I appreciate your thought, but I want to get a second opinion on that. Things like that. Any other consultations, anything that would be considered kind of like a bump in the road in the audit process, I have to communicate that to you as governance to let you know were there things that we had to overcome. And very clean communication, no disagreements, no difficulties, no consultations. We had a few little immaterial items we pass on. Sometimes we'll look at find some little differences. We accumulate those and just report those, let you know. Just a very clean process, really. So happy to say that. I think too, also, if you go back a number of years, guarantee there used to be a bullet list of adjustments and things like that in that letter. And in that letter also, there is about a 10-page document, what we call the management representation letter. When we are completely done the audit and we prepared the financial statements, management's reviewed them, we've gone back and forth cleaning up differences or things of that nature, every question's been answered by us, we give a letter to management that says, hey, we're not aware of fraud, we're not aware of any control problems, no significant litigation. We've told you everything, we've answered all of your questions, we've provided everything to you. We give that letter to management, we date it that day, they sign it, they give it back to us, and then we're done. We give that to you as council attached to our communications, just so you can see all the different type of representations that management is making to us on behalf of council and the town as a whole. And the final thing I'll just mention too, because we're not really sitting around a table today, but we do provide the additional financial analysis document. There's some graphical discussions in there. Some of the items that I think are really important to look at are things like your months in fund balance. How much general fund balance do you have sitting there to cover how many months of expenses? And I won't dive into specifics, but I will say that the town is not an anomaly compared to a lot of our other towns. We see the ranges, whether it's the town of Blacksburg to town of Appomattox or whatnot. We see those fluctuations, but the town of Bedford's right there where almost all of them are. So, and another item too that we've always talked about too is that business type activity self-sufficiency graph. First time ever, the solid waste fund actually was at 100 and maybe like 101%, just a hair. It covered itself from an accounting basis, expense standpoint. Any questions?
So far, so good.
I do want to go back to that 3.2 million ARPA funds. Isn't that earmarked to the water authority? Is all of that earmarked to the water authority? Correct. Okay. So we don't really have it available because we haven't spent it, but we have
You know what you're doing
restricted
with
it.
it, yes. And one thing too, we audit the water authority, so we audit how they're spending it, and then we actually audit it here, how you're spending it to them, and keeping an eye on how they're having it audited. So it's kind of like we're hitting all the different sides of that.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure no one thought we still had 3.2 million. We could.
And in case you're curious, the Helm Street tank project is underway.
Yeah, right.
One of those projects funded.
It's suspended by December of 2026. It has to be committed by this year, but we've already met that requirement with our contract.
And one other real quick question on the notes on page 30, the lease liability, that's the vehicles we're starting to lease now instead of purchase. Is that what that? So that's kind of new to
Correct.
our long-term debt schedule.
Correct. So a number of years ago, depending on certain criteria, as you leased items, previously they were just expensed. There were situations, a lot of times with vehicles sometimes, where we would still put it on there. But 2 or 3 years ago, the standards changed the fact that you just expense it every year. And we said, you know what, you've committed to it. It's a liability. And so we added it to the long-term debt schedule.
And then, let me find the page. It's the financial statement on the electrical. So our net position increased, even though, and we had an operating income surplus. Of course, you look at our cash year over year, it gone down, substantially. And I didn't get a good chance to look at the cash statement or cash flows. Remind me what page I'm supposed to be looking at.
So that would be cash flow statement is 15 and 16, exhibit 10.
Yes, right, so electric. So like I said, the operating income, we had about $1 million operating income.
Yes.
And then, but our cash came down year over year about 800,000. So maybe just to help
Sure.
Explain kind of how that flows and where, I think it's probably in capital investment, but I just want to kind of explain that.
Absolutely. Always happy to talk about cash flow statements. Your financial statements on page 14, where we're talking about how you have operating income of $1 million, that's your income statement at a full accounting basis, meaning things that are not cash yet, but there's something that you did that maybe you'll pay later. It's showing up here as an expense because we're capturing that when you did it, when you did that, when your employee worked for you, you're capturing that payroll expense on this statement when they work for you. You might pay them after July because that's just the way your payroll schedule is. But that's the purpose of Exhibit 9. That's your full accounting basis operating statement. But then when you flip to the next page, what we do is the cash flow statement takes all these different accounting differences, non-cash items, and pulls them out and says, you know what, you bought a building 10 years ago for $10 million and we're allocating that cost over 40 years. And that's shown as an expense in the full accounting basis, but that's not cash. You spent that cash 10 years ago. So what's the impact here? Nothing, because you spent that already. So this statement is pulling all that activity out, things that are not cash, that are just timing or just to capture activities that may not have turned into cash yet. Same thing with the cash coming in the door too. Accounts receivable from your citizens, from your customers. We're pulling all that out to show on Exhibit 10 what is the true cash activity of the town. And one thing you'll see is that you had $1 million of operating income for electric, but you had $2.3 million of operating cash inflow. So that's a big difference. A lot of that is just changes. One of the things that jumps out to me the most in this adjustment is the fact that electric inventory went down like $400,000. It went up. I'm sorry, it went up $400,000. When you buy inventory, that's not an expense. So that's not on that Exhibit 9. It's not an expense yet until you use it, but it's a cash outflow. So you're taking that, so you have to adjust for that. Same thing with that non-cash depreciation. You're adding that back to that operating income because it's not cash. And so you come up with a $2.3 million inflow of cash from operations, but then you transferred some of it to the general fund, I believe. You also paid off capital debt of $1.2 million. You paid interest of $126,000. You did invest in capital. You bought $1.6 million of new fixed assets, but you also received about $400,000 of interest income. And so once you eliminate all of those non-cash items, those timing differences, the result is that even though you had $1 million of operating income on an accounting basis, you had a $775,000 decrease in cash. So does that make it? It's conceptually, I'll say that's some of the hardest thing for even my staff to do. They hate doing cash flow statements. So
We all do.
yeah, after like a decade, they'll get bored of everything else.
And like I said, that it is two totally different things.
It really
It
is.
can be contradictory kind of if you don't, so, obviously you want to make sure you're paying your expenses on your income statement, but you also need to keep an eye on your cash too, to
Correct.
just make sure, So,
You always want to
I've
generate-
talked about it a
yeah.
lot. I just want them to kind of look at these two statements and understand, because it is. I mean, you go, well, wait a minute, we made $1 million, but we lost $800,000 cash.
Yep.
You know, that's kind of,
Unless you're an accountant, it sometimes gets a little muddy to
Right.
think about it. And you're like, how is that even possible? You know, that we turned $1 million of profit into $800,000 decrease in cash. And it's just all timing. Over time, over 100 years, it all evens out. But it's just all the ins and outs. And we're taking a snapshot as of June 30th on July 1st. This could be completely different. Because you might have paid off that accrued payroll or paid that vendor or bought a new fixed asset. So this is just a snapshot right at that point in time.
yeah, I appreciate you taking a little extra time.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else, King?
I just want to say he does an awesome job every year.
Appreciate
I've
it.
seen you many years, and you got a great finance director right there to help you.
Appreciate that. I mean, we always appreciate working with the town. It's one of those jobs where we know we're gonna get a good work product and it's timely and we're here and we're not cramming it out on December 15th. I mean, it's all around, it's a great working with y'all. So appreciate it.
We thank you for you.
Well,
Thank you.
I just want to let you three new guys want to know something. Between Ann and these people, they can always make you look good when it comes to this. The rest of it, you're on your own.
yeah, let's see if we can make a little more than $6 in solid waste next year. I mean,
Hey, you made $6.
I'm still like, how did that
Yeah,
happen?
that's probably a first.
I looked at it when I was prepping again last night. I was like, they made $6. That's a win.
That is a win, you better.
Yeah.
Zero funds.
Yeah. So, well, I appreciate everybody's time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, once again, good job to you and your staff. Appreciate
Very
that.
good, very good.
Putting all that effort in to get that good, clean audit report, so. All right, Mr. Warner, I'll let you kind of, if you want, we're gonna, like I said, we're just gonna kind of hit some of the major topics that and I don't think we've got all of them on the list.
Oh, no.
But, you know, so Bart's gonna kind of give you a little heads up of, you know, what we've been talking about over time, you know, things that are coming, that's still gonna, you know, just transition kind of. You know, as we go through maybe each section, you know, if any council member wants to add anything to Bart's kind of summary, if y'all want to, you know, ask a, like I said, any kind of general question, you know, we'll try to answer them. You know, you may come up with something we haven't even thought about yet, but you know, and we got a lot of them, so we're just going to try to kind of, we're still in pretty good shape, I think. So, I'll let Bart get started on that. Y'all got the agenda sheet? Everybody got one of those? Okay. All right.
And basically, it's an unusual circumstance. I mean, we don't frequently have this kind of turnover on council, but let's take advantage of the opportunity for all of us. We've thought it would be beneficial for you new folks coming in to talk about some of the things that are ongoing that you're going to inherit. I mean, use a football analogy, we're going to execute a handoff and you guys are going to take off running. But it's also good for existing folks to kind of touch base on some things we've been talking about, so you guys can have an idea of the status of some long planned for and discussed things and where we are and where we're moving. And it's good for staff too. So, you know, it's an unusual situation, but maybe this is something we might want to incorporate into our regular procedure. Just saying. Anyhow, we've kind of broken things down by operational area and particularly departments. And I'm going to start with the police department. Obviously, the first thing we're going to need to do is hire a new police chief. The status of that is I have not advertised the position yet for a couple of reasons. One is we've still got an incumbent who's doing a great job and who will be with us officially through January. And we want to respect his ability to keep doing some really good things for the community and executing those things and following through. The other thing is, and I don't take our folks for granted, I want to preface my comments there, we don't have to be in a hurry because we have an outstanding staff. Good command staff, 2 captains and a lieutenant know what to do when Ronnie's not around. Beyond that, we have the sergeants, the corporals, and a command staff. Frankly, it's what I've tried to put in place with my management philosophy, that there's no one person that will stop things from happening. So we're able to continue doing what we need to do, picking back up with our accreditation and those kinds of things. I will tell you that I'm talking to Ronnie about his input for the process and what we need to talk about, new candidates coming in, what they need to know. Intend to get that ad out probably in the next month. I'm already getting calls from people who are interested in the job, and I'm kind of having to put them on hold. So that's also a good thing. But that's obviously the biggest operational thing, and finding the right person is the goal there. I'm willing to take a little bit longer if it takes long, but the main thing is making sure we get the right person, and it's a good mutual fit. We've learned that has to work both ways.
Real quick on that, and just, I'm sure you probably know, but just so to make sure, Bart hires the department heads, okay? So, the council only hires, Bart and the attorney and the clerk, so just, that's the kind of the process, the chain of command a little bit, and I know he's the last time, he'll probably do the same thing this time. He had like an interview panel with law enforcement, and then he also had a second interview panel with some citizens and some, so that'll
It's a long day of interviews. It's hard on everybody, but it yields good results.
So you kind of get it, both sides of the community trying to help pick the right one.
I guess the only question I have is, a Virginia Tech grad, come on.
We try to overlook it.
He's got a jacket here.
I don't know how you feel about UNC Charlotte, but I have a degree from there too. But,
All right, so go on to anything else on kind of that process and.
The next thing you got, everybody in the room I think is aware of, that our existing police facility right now is not super functional. Now, we've undertaken a short-term solution by utilizing the community building at Liberty Lake Park. We're not moved in yet, but we're close. I think the last things are getting the security systems in there with the keypads and everything and some of the IT stuff, but we're going to be moving the detectives out there. It is different in that we're decentralizing our operation a bit, but again, we're trying to be good stewards of the property we do have, and frankly, that building sitting out there sat empty for a lot of the time, hasn't really been utilized since we got out of the rec business. The other thing was having a full-time police presence there would help discourage some activities that we would not want to see at the parks. And we have not had a lot of those activities, but we certainly don't want to start having those. So that's a temporary solution to address what I'm going to call the crowding issue in the basement. Still, there's some issues there. The other thing I'll tell you, and it's not directly related, but public safety all kind of works together, is there's issues with the firehouse as well. And some of those relate to appropriate bunking facilities for both male and female fire personnel. Some of it relates to the foundation. Some of it relates to an opportunity we have to get our ISO rating down possibly to a 2, which those of you are familiar, the insurance organizations rate you from 1 to 9, 1 being the absolute best. Currently, we are at a 3. It's kind of like the school grading scale, 90 to 100 is 1, 80 to 89 is 2. We're at a 72. We're looking at points we can get. We'd like to revisit the discussion of another facility for the police department. I'm not saying it has to be new. Obviously, we have to live within our means, and we have to revisit the process we had in place. We have invested a lot of money in design documents that, frankly, are on hold right now. That's the bad news. The good news is we own that intellectual property, and we're not wed to any one site. So we're probably going to pester the daylights out of the new folks and the folks coming back about different alternatives there, and I think we need to be open to a variety of those. And I'm going to jump right into the next category here because it kind of relates as well. The fact that the police department is in this building is significant because this building is terrible. I have no great affection for this building at all. That's Bart's personal opinion. He didn't ask for it, but it was built in 1968. We get as much use of it out of it as we can, but it's just got some issues. Some of it was things that were state of the art 57 years ago, 6 years ago, that aren't anymore. We've got a mold issue. Just got the report today that bad news is we have a mold issue. In the area downstairs in the basement, there are some things that could be affecting the health of employees. We're cleaning those up. I'm going to tell you, that's an expensive undertaking, but it's a have-to proposition. We have to take care of our employees first. Have to make sure the people coming in the building are safe. So I'm not really negotiable on that, and Anne's going to help us find the money to do that. Beyond that, though, the efficiency of this building has always been questionable. So we're looking at the possibility of other options that might be available. And I'm just going, when we talked about building a new police department, we looked at a couple of other options before we went down that path that we ultimately stopped. One was the surgical tools building on Monroe Street. We looked at that long and hard, decided probably would not be cost effective to renovate that for our purposes. We also looked at the Wells Fargo building and had kind of the same discussion. Parking was an issue there. And then ultimately that building was purchased and is active as a privately operating, revenue producing, business producing, drawing people into the community business. So I know that the county is talking about doing something with the Burke Scott building up the street. D.W. Lawhorn suggested we might want to look at that. I think it's a good idea. And so just letting you know, those are the kinds of facility discussions we're going to have. The good news is once we get these licked, I think we can be done for a long, long time. And as much as I don't like this building, I'm not suggesting we abandon it, because as much as I've said about it, nobody else is going to buy it from us, I'm sure. But we can make use with what we've got, and I think we can get a handle on our capital needs probably within the next 4 to 5 years and be done. It's just a matter of figuring out how we do that. And that's going to take a community discussion. I'll stop there in case you have any questions.
Just to follow up on what Bart said, of course, I've been here a good part of my life, and I remember when this building was built and when we had maybe 7 or 8 police officers then. So it served its purpose and has been for a number of years, and that was back when basically the police officers lived in the town, the surrounding areas, and you knew all their first names, basically. It was that hometown feeling, but now it's gone a different direction. We have, what, 24?
24 sworn, yes.
24 officers, and we desperately need a bigger police building, plus a fire department. So we'll be looking at that and seeing what direction we need to go.
Yeah, like I said, we did the right thing. I mean, we did the right thing to stopping it when we did, financially.
Yeah.
Where interest rates were and where we were with our finances, there was no way we could, financially responsible, take on that amount of debt, The challenge becomes, it's not gonna get any cheaper, so how do you find a way to, like I said, is there a way to kind of put 2 facilities in with one, maybe, or is there a way to build it in phases, or, we never got to that next step just because we didn't think at this point in time we needed to go to that next step because we couldn't afford it right now anyway. So, those are all the things we've kind of thought about. We haven't really talked about it in depth. I mean, because we just had gotten to the point where we said, all right, let's stop right now. And let's, because we knew we had to fill this hole that's coming up within a couple of years, and we started working on that. That was the first priority, is let's work on that, make sure we got that covered, so that we're not dealing with that. And I think we've made some real good progress on that, with some of the things we did last year. That's one of those long term. It's going to take a lot of figuring out how to do it and where to do it. But it's still out there. The need's still there. The need's not going to go away. So anyway.
Also add to that, with the growth of the town and growth of the area that we're taking in and stuff like that, we're probably gonna have to hire a few more police officers down the road to help.
Maybe not. I mean,
It all
we'll see.
depends, because you gotta realize, if you figure a police officer goes on a call and goes on a mental call, they pretty much tied up a whole,
Yeah.
for 8 hours almost. So, I mean, you gotta have somebody cover the shifts, so.
Yeah. Those are all.
We got some brainstorming to do, in other
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. So.
But is there any one thing, I know we've talked about the issues of the municipal building before. is there any one thing that's a priority now, or is
It is
something
mold
you really
free.
keep talking about? I mean,
Well,
the
the
scope of mold, mold is always a problem.
Yeah,
Is it
clean-
to a point where we got to do something with it now?
we're cleaning it up. I'm at the point where I want to figure out where it's coming from, how we stop it.
Okay.
And I don't have that answer yet, Bob. I'm glad you asked. We think, well, I'm sorry, we know that the boiler room stays wet. When we know that the condensation from the HVAC system is a culprit there because the drip pans are circa 1968, and we can't get to them to replace them. And frankly, some of them are corroded and the water's just going through and it's getting in the walls and it's causing mold. Now, I want to make sure that there's not another problem. I want to make sure there's not groundwater. I mean, we just want to make sure. I don't want to continue to throw money at fixing this. I want to fix it right the first time. And I also want to fix what's causing it. And right now, I think we know it's condensation, but I'm not convinced of that. And replacing the HVAC system, the way it was constructed, it's almost like they put it in, built the building around it. One of the quotes we got was $1.5 million to replace the HVAC system with a 2024 vintage. I'm not recommending that right now because first off, I'm not convinced that's a problem. So certainly not recommending we spend $1.5 million and not fix the problem. Secondly, I think there's probably more efficient ways to do that, and that'll be part of our conversation. So thank you for that. We're figuring things out. There's some big numbers associated with the municipal building, but again, I think we can fix it, get it right, and be done with it. And
Investigating the problem.
Mr. Woodard, our new public works director, and he's casting a wide net. We're getting quotes from Roanoke, anywhere they'll give them to us. He's talking to people he knows down in Florida. If they know people up this way, I mean, we're trying to get as many different looks at this as we can.
And the water that's running, that's creating foundation? Any
I hope it's
foundation
not.
problems yet?
Not that we know of, but that's what I want to make. That's another issue. I don't, yeah. I'm hoping it's not a groundwater issue. I'm hoping it's condensation. That still doesn't make me happy either, but.
Any questions on any of those two big facility things right now? All right.
Yeah, you're
Like I said-
inheriting a gently used municipal building.
Yeah, like I said, all right, good enough. We'll move
Okay,
on.
solid waste, let me just tell you, I am pleasantly surprised by the financial performance of solid waste, and I would love to tell you we have that figured out. I don't know that we do. First quarter still looks good. You're gonna find I'm pretty cautious by nature, but I think you pay me to behave that way. Let's look at 3 more months of data and see where it's going, because Tom and I have talked quite a bit about our operations and maybe some efficiencies we can utilize there. Frankly, some of this was financially driven. We're prepared, and we're still prepared to have this conversation. Let's talk about doing things differently. Possibility of even contracting out garbage service. One of the reasons I hired Tom was he has extensive experience in all facets.
Yeah.
He's been through that process in Florida. They did that, and frankly, he told me he did not agree with it, which appealed to me because I know he's given it a lot of thought. So I've asked him to take a look at our operation now and give us his thoughts on that. And as part of the budget discussion, and we're going to start presenting that to you guys in January, that's going to be an option. Frankly, the way we collect and dispose of solid waste, you guys are probably pretty familiar with this, but I'll just spell it out too for my own benefit mainly. You know, the residential collection that we do, we have the right to take that to the county and we haul it directly there, and we don't pay a dime in tipping fees, and that's part of the reversion agreement. I will tell you candidly, they don't like that a bit, and I understand why. It's not a good deal for them. And they're looking at ways to get out of it. And I'm a nice guy, and Robert Hiss and I get along great, but I'm not going to give it up if I don't have to. So that's where we are. The only expense we have for residential garbage is getting it to the landfill and the occasional time when our truck hits their building, but that's another story. For non-residential trash, we collect that and we take it to our transfer station at our old landfill. Then we have an arrangement with Bay's Trash Removal where they come collect it and haul it to Pittsylvania County. And the reason we do that is Pittsylvania County has the lowest tipping fees of any landfill around. Much cheaper than Bedford County. And they don't charge us to haul it. Basically, they pay the tipping, we get the tipping fees based on the volume we send down there, which is beneficial to them. and we don't have to pay the cost of getting it there. That hauling cost is about $180,000, and we're saving that. That combined with the savings of the tipping fees makes our non-residential trash work right now. I will tell you, I negotiated that deal with the county administrator in Pittsylvania County, who is no longer there. There are 2 administrators away from him now. I don't know if their board of supervisors realizes we have that good a deal, so we have to keep that in mind. One of the things we might want to talk about is that transfer station and what its value is to us. Maybe we bid it out for sale, maybe we leverage it for better service, but that's getting really far down the weeds, but this impacts that bottom line as well. And that's the level of detail we're at staff level we're going to be bringing you into. So we offer really robust solid waste services. I mean, frankly, if you put anything out the curb anytime, we're going to get it. Now, we probably need to tighten that up a little bit because it's stressful on staff, but it's a pretty high level of service. And to be able to do that and still make money makes me happy. I just want to make sure we're still doing that.
Yeah.
So, and again, this will come up in the budget. Okay, next thing in Public Works is, Public Works has charge of all town-owned facilities pretty much, making sure they're fine. We have some capital needs, we know, not only in this building, but in our parks. Liberty Lake Park is a great, wonderful facility. I will tell you, it is frankly a facility that functions at a regional scale, and we maintain it with the town staff. So we've talked about some improvements that need to be made, particularly with the walking trail out there. That's an asphalt trail that's seen its better days. We've got to do some work on that. We need to do some work on Payne Park, which is downtown. Good news is we've got volunteers who've stepped up and are willing to help us. If there are volunteers willing to help anywhere, we're willing to take that on. The other thing I will tell you is operationally, for the past several years, we have contracted out a lot of work. We're moving away from that. Because frankly, with the most recent project, the infield replacement, that's the sand, for lack of a better term, in the ball fields, we've contracted that out, and we issued that contract in June, and the guys haven't started to work yet. And in my conversations with Tom, I asked him, I was like, do we have the ability to do this ourselves? He said, yeah, okay. So instead of contracting that, we're going to start putting our guys to work and maybe reallocating those resources. So another shift, particularly in road patching and sidewalk patching. Talked to the Water Authority. Basically, they are concerned about getting things fixed when they break. Patching them back at an optimal level is not really in their wheelhouse. Brian Key and I talked. We're going to work this out in an MOU. Basically, what we're going to do from now on is we're going to do the patching, and I'm going to say we'll do it better than what's been done. And if we incur expenses from them, we're going to bill them for that at fair market value. That's all a verbal agreement at this point, but we're going to put that down. And that's a little bit of a shift in work. The other thing I'll tell you is there's some property the town owns that we need to figure out what we want to do with. Most recently, we purchased a large piece of property next to Liberty Lake Park. This was about 5 or 6 years ago. We've never decided what we want to do with it. So we drew up a concept plan with Hurt and Profit, but frankly, we just didn't do anything with it. More notoriously, perhaps, is we own property adjacent to the Stony Creek Reservoir. We need to decide if there is any interest in doing something with that. I don't mind stating publicly that we probably need to discuss that with the Water Authority first to see if they're interested. If they are, then we need to go through an appropriate process to have that discussion. And that's going to be in conjunction with legal staff, make sure we bid it properly if we go there. But, and there's other kind of odds and ends properties that the town also owns that occasionally we're going to ask you guys to look at and tell us if you have any thoughts about.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. You know, we've talked about parks, and Tom's been around and inspected everything, and like I said, we can incorporate a whole lot of those things in just through the normal budget process. You know, and a lot of it's just kind of deferred maintenance. The bigger item is, yeah, we did buy 2 tracts of land right next to the park with the intention of one day maybe expanding
the park, a little bit. I think that's some opportunities to maybe work with the county, you know, and see, you know, if they have a use for some of those for the athletic facilities, or, you know, it almost needs a whole new kind of study from what the community wants in their parks and that kind of stuff. So that's another kind of long-term. I mean, the deferred maintenance stuff, like I said, they're gonna get, I think I'm pretty sure Tom's gonna just start getting on that with the staff now, and knocking some of those things out. But the bigger picture is, you know, what you do. With not just that park, I mean, we've got four or five parks, you know,
And our best customers for using those parks, frankly, are Bedford County Recreation, their athletic facilities, and the schools. The middle school baseball team has kind of taken over Field 3 at the top of Liberty Lake Park, and that's been a good relationship for us because they take great care of it. And that's a regularly scheduled field, and we know how it works, we know how to support it, and it's a good relationship. So, and with some of the change in personnel, Bedford County, Robert Hiss and I have talked about that. They want to use our facility. So,
You know, most of these facilities, volunteers, I mean, you can get it done because it's, and you have volunteers. I remember one year we blitzed 2 parks the same day. But Liberty Lake Park, the one thing about the trails that we need to take a look at too, the trails were cleared. Walking through the trails, there were no brush, but in the past, when people have cut the brush down, they have thrown it over in there, and it's piled up and become a habitat. That's not a good idea. So whatever we're doing on those trails, if we can sort of thin that out a little bit, and I think we can get enough volunteers to get the parks. Now, a lot of the things you're talking about, you know, putting down asphalt and all that, well, that's on you. But as far as the painting and different stuff, shrubbery, I think we can get enough volunteers to do that.
and if we can get the parks in good enough shape, again, sometimes guys might get hit up with some of these questions. We don't do a lot of recreation programming. Okay, actually, we don't do any. But if we have facilities that other people can make use of, that's great. And I'll tell you, he probably doesn't mind me saying this, Jonathan Hayden told me, if we can get that trail cleaned up, we could do something very similar to what Roanoke County does with Illuminites and tie that into the other Christmas lights. So again, there's a lot of things that the town does not do directly, but I think our view, anyway, at staff level, is we can provide the fertile soil and other people can grow the garden in it. And this is a community that can definitely do that. So that's kind of the operating philosophy.
And then the thing with the water authority on the roads now, that's huge. I mean, because believe me, you'll get called and you'll get asked, I mean, I've been on BART for weeks now, you know, water authority cut my road 2 months ago, when they go pave it? He said, I guess he got tired of me asking when they go.
Now, the bad thing is, given the timing of the year, the asphalt plants are about to close. So we're going through a cold patch on the roads. But.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, you know, but anyway, I think that would be a much better way for us to take, because, and we've all talked about it, you know, we're responsible for the roads. The water authority is not responsible for them, you know, so let's make sure they're done right and you know.
Dave, did you have a question?
Yeah.
I just had a comment to kind of go off on what Carson was saying about, so is there a place or a site that the community can go to see what the volunteer opportunities are?
Ooh, that's a great idea.
We never got to that point. I think.
I agree that I think volunteers can do a whole lot, but if they don't know what the opportunities are, then.
That's, if Tom, you know, if Tom can identify some of those things.
And I know Woody's listening to us. He can probably help us with that too.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, and
Has there been any discussion, comments, anything about the property next to the armory? Is that a public works thing, or is it?
we do own that. I think it goes all the way from Main Street back to Orange Street along Gold Road. A few possibilities there. We could sell it. We could let other people use it, or again, I don't want to beat this drum too much. We might consider that for some future facility for public safety. That'll be a you guys' decision.
Yeah.
But yes, that's that's certainly a property that merits some attention.
We'll look at all options.
All right,
All right. Moving the next area of focus, planning, community development. Probably the biggest thing right now we have going on is the comprehensive plan revision, and CG and I talked about this today, and I hope you don't mind, I'm not speaking for CG. I think we're both a little bit frustrated about the lack of awareness or involvement, and I'm going to admit up front, we need to do a better job of engaging, but we really struggle with that because we have meetings that nobody comes to. We broadcast them and people watch them, maybe they comment. We send out flyers, we put booths at tables, but, and I was telling CG, when I came here as the planning director in 2000, I rewrote the comprehensive plan then. I sent out a formal survey and I had 54 responses, and that was what we based the comp plan on, so. Communications in general is something we struggle with. Having the resources we have is great, but I'm talking out loud and I'm kind of stammering here. Feel like we have 8,000 different points of information. We can access any bit of data we want, and we're no more intelligent than we've ever been. So I'm open to suggestions on that one.
Well, we don't have the answers. I mean, I just was, my board and I were kind of bouncing things off each other, and I've talked to Mary also, and it's kind of frustrating in that we have the flyers to fill that out, but we talked about it in the planning commission last Thursday. I don't feel like the people are informed enough to know what the comp plan is to fill it out. I mean, they'll fill things out, and we'll get, I think Mary said 61 responses so far, which is not real good, and she said that. But at the same time, if we had some way to inform the general public as to what exactly it is and how important it is and what it means to the town moving forward, and we need their input. But until we figure out that vehicle, I don't know what the best avenue is to go. And that's kind of, for me, the little frustrating part, because in the past, I'll be honest, the past probably times I've been on council, I couldn't tell you what the previous comp plans did or accomplished. You know, it's one of those things every 7 years in the charter we do, but what it really accomplishes or who moves it forward, I don't know, but I'm a little more attached to this one because I've been involved in it from the day one. So I want to see this one maybe succeed, do a little more and accomplish a little more, but we still have those little hurdles to get over and figure out what really we need to do, and that maybe some town hall meetings of different areas. I don't know, but if y'all have any ideas, throw them out there to us.
that's still just in the early stages.
It is.
Yes,
Of about an
yes.
18-month
Yeah.
process, something like that, so it's still
But the information we get now
would
will drive it forward, yes.
Well, and I'm going to make a comment too. Nature abhors a vacuum. There is going to be a vision for this community that is put in place, and somebody's going to set that in place. And frankly, it's going to be council. And, you know, I think we want to make sure the community knows we want the input. But absent the input, we're going to have to move forward with the vision. Good news is we can always amend that vision. We can always kind of stop, catch our breath, and see how we're doing. But we've got to have something to go with, and the leadership of this community that's elected by the community will do that. And staff's prepared to support you in that.
And we do that by connecting with the community. We do. All of us, when we was running for council, we walked around the neighborhoods, we walked up and down the streets,
Yeah.
talking to people once we got to get our petition signed. We listened to what they were concerned about. We did that.
Yep.
Once we got all of that done and we got on council, we didn't do that anymore. And that might be something, maybe on an afternoon walk or something, you stop by people, how you doing, this is what we trying to do. Connect with people, and when they come here with a complaint, find the time to go see what they're talking about, instead of just looking at a piece of paper in front of you. If they go where they got the problem at, and say, show me what you're talking about, you know? But we're the leaders, we gotta connect with them, you know? They're not gonna come to us unless we make them understand you play an important role in this. We appreciate your input. And the whole time we was walking and getting these petitions, we was talking to a lot of people. And they was venting and they was talking about what they'd like to see. Well, now we're here, so let's talk to them again. How do you think we're doing? What do you know what I'm saying? I don't mean they, like you getting the petition, but when you get a chance, you stop, you see them in the grocery store, you talk to them. That's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna have to connect with the people and not wait for them to come to us. We're gonna have to go to them and encourage them to come to us,
And Bob is exactly right. I can tell you from my previous career, you get a call on the phone. A phone call is okay, talk to them, but you get in your car or wherever, go out in the field and talk to them, you go to where it is. That goes a long way. They remember that and remember who you are. Yeah.
I mean, you kind of might hit the nail on the head a little bit in that where you go to the community, like when Chief Lewis and they came out to Longwood and talked about the
Yeah.
traffic there.
Correct.
So you go there, you go to Governor's Hill, you go to just different areas and say, hey, we're going to be here.
Yeah.
And that might be one way to get a little bit more
Yeah.
things out. I don't know. I know it's a problem because I've seen it in the past too. so.
And I will say, we can't do it all.
Right.
There's some things we can do, some things we can't, but at least we listen and try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and this might be a good segue. A lot of discussion centers around Centertown, downtown here, because it's the historical heart of the community. It's people identify with it, people care about it. Thank God they do. The worst thing would be to have things happening or going away and nobody say a word about it. So I appreciate the fact that people are a little bit upset. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Bedford is absolutely a place worth caring about and a place worth doing something about. At staff level, we continue to do things. One of the things you may or may not know, we just got a grant. We'll work with the USDA to do a downtown study on retail. We've got previous studies on the books. We did a plan, school-to-school plan that won awards, frankly, from the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'll tell you candidly, we didn't implement a lot of it. So,
Well, and at some level, the business community downtown didn't, they came out and didn't want those kind of improvements.
but one of the things that occurs, and we've talked about this a lot at staff level, there is a lot of good in the community. There are a lot of good things happening by a lot of hardworking people, and we want to talk to them and find out what makes that work. And Jay, I'm going to pick on you. Mr. Ippolito is an example of a business that works in town. We need to find out, okay, what makes it successful? What are the challenges? What keeps that from being duplicated? I'm going to mention somebody else by name. Bill Mosley redid a building on the corner of Depot and Bridge, which is perfect. Retail on the bottom, residential on top. That's exactly what we need. What's preventing that from happening? And we need to ask, that's not a rhetorical question. We have to ask it, because if it's us, we can fix that. Or if we don't fix it, we need to get out of the way and let somebody else fix it. So those are the kind of conversations we're prepared to have. We also need to be prepared to act on.
And another big thing that's on the works is the underground electric system in downtown. So we've started talking about that a little bit. It hasn't gotten to the top of the priority list of electric things, but that's going to be a fairly extensive project.
And very disruptive.
And very disruptive, because it's not just electric you're gonna have underground. You've got water and sewer, you got storm water. So you're gonna have to coordinate. If you're gonna tear it up once, you just need to tear it up once, so you're gonna have to coordinate with Water Authority and Public Works. That's gonna be an extensive, long process, but it's gonna have to happen sooner than later, because the electric lines aren't in conduit. They're starting to have some issues a little bit. So, that's, we've talked about, okay, well, what do we do to fix it, beautify it? But you don't want to, there's no need to do anything really a whole lot above ground if you're going to have to go back and go underground and fix everything. So, but it's probably getting closer and closer to the fact we need to start planning. Are y'all going to need to start planning for that project too? So,
Has John given thought to that, or has start to get a plan together?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Because that would probably be done in, I would think, blocks or phases. Or,
There's no easy way to do it.
Yeah, I
So
know,
I
I
want
know.
to preface that, but that might be the easiest way.
well, I know.
Which is
I've
not going to
said-
be easy.
I've said this, I know they did it in Lynchburg, and it took several years, and it's
Yeah.
still ongoing, I think, the final part.
And look, what they did in the mid-1980s was wonderful and did everything the right way, so.
Yeah.
And 40-some years later, we're realizing that we have to keep up with it and fix it, so.
Well, it's kind of like the police department, in a way, was done the correct way at that time, and now time's caught up with us.
Hopefully 40 years from now, they're not
I know.
saying, well, we respect what those guys did back in the 20s.
Yeah, I
but
know.
yeah, so, and, you know, and then the other piece, the vacant buildings, you know, that conversation needs to be had. I mean, what are the options, you know, to try to, you know, we've got plenty of carrots out there, you know, now, or do you want to put sticks to go with the carrots, and what does that look like, you know, so, that, I'm sure that's gonna be a big topic for you guys too. And,
I guess the bottom line, gentlemen, is this. The next years or so, it's not gonna be business as usual in Bedford. We got a lot of good things going on. You have to make a lot of good decisions, but the key word there is good things. We got a lot of good things going, and it's gonna all come into fruition all at one time. So, it's not gonna be business as usual in Bedford.
yeah, you know, obviously, you're aware of the growth that's coming, I mean, residential growth. I don't know how much you're aware of what our EDA is doing with the NOAA project. That could be transformative from a manufacturer or training. However that whole thing works out, you know, they do own the property now. They've got the grant going to clean the place up. They've got the grant, they've appointed their advisory board to help put a business plan together. So that thing's moving forward, and, you know, that's gonna bring a lot of good opportunity here, you know. We got, obviously, the hotel that's in the works. We got the train station in the works. So, you know, you got a lot of stuff that, you know, you'll still have to keep making decisions and finding out how to move those things forward, but you'll have a lot of good things to work with. And all those things will eventually kind of help in the downtown situation too, because, I mean, they're gonna be looking for places to put businesses, hopefully. But anything else on downtown? Any questions y'all got, or like I said?
Kind of getting down in the weeds a little bit with operations. Let me mention to you about our information technology operation. Obviously, that's crucial. Everything in the world is data-driven. I say that having only recognized that recently. It's always been data-driven, forever. Maintaining that requires people to know what they're doing, have the right tools, have the right support. I will tell you, and most people are not aware of this, information technology is not its own department. I'm intending, as part of the budget conversation, to correct that and to create that as its own department. And it's not just nuts and bolts and fixing the phone and the computer, it's business continuity. That's the focus. We have done that in-house, and we've been both successful and lucky. We've had really good people who worked hard at it, knew what they were doing, kept us afloat. What we're doing, and frankly what everybody else around us is doing, is moving towards more of a hybrid arrangement whereby we continue to have one, probably two in-house people who boots on the ground, put out the fires, take care of things. But we also are going to look to engage a contractor to help us with the broader things, managing the franchises, making sure the software things are what they are supposed to be. So looking to create a new department. We'll have to amend the town code to do that. That's going to be part of the budget discussion, which again, you guys will ultimately get to decide. Will cost us a little bit more than what we're paying now, but again, it's almost one of those have-to situations. We've got to make sure that we keep the lights on, and we got to make sure that the trash truck keeps running. And I mentioned that because there's digital components in our trash truck that frequently go down, which causes problems in that operation. So the good old days of gears and oil and carbon paper are gone. We've got to participate in the digital age. So that's coming up, and that's our plan to deal with it. The electric department, you probably know, the biggest thing there is we've engaged with Raftellus to conduct a study of our whole operation, really. Focus there is on our rate study and our structures there, our revenue needs. We haven't looked at our rates and tariffs in 8 years, so it's certainly time. We've got large electric users, large customers that are impacted by that. We'd like to keep them here if we can, and frankly, that's a fundamental discussion. So that's all ongoing. We've kicked off that process last week, and they're on the ground, and within 6 months, we think we're going to have certainly recommendations about rate study and revenue needs, but we're also interested in seeing what else they tell us. There's a lot I can tell you about the electric operation, and I will for as long as you're here and as long as I'm here. It's a complicated business.
Yeah.
That study will be more comprehensive than just some rates.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're referring to it as the rate study, but that's really only one component of it.
Yeah, you will spend a lot of time on the electric utility. I mean, it's, you know, it's a big enterprise, you know, and it's an important enterprise. So you'll, there's a lot to learn and get up to speed on with that. But, you know, we're always trying to find ways to save on costs and as much as we can, because it's a regulatory environment that, you know, a lot of times we don't have much control over what we can do and can't do. But John does a pretty good job of trying to put some stuff together. I know we're working on our second study on maybe some improvements at our dam down on the James River. So there's a lot of moving parts in that area.
And, well, I'll tell you, our main focus with electricity is reliability. I mean, again, electricity, it's not a public right, but I don't know if anybody can live without it, so we're sensitive to that. We need to make sure it's there. We also want to be as independent as we can, knowing full well we're not going to get there. Part of that is while we're in the hydro business and stay in the hydro business, we have solar. Frankly, we still buy more power than we generate, and as long as we're in that situation, we're subject to the whims of the market. So we're going to continue to try to get out from under that, but that's an expensive proposition as well. And one thing I'll tell you is we could add 1 or 2 turbines to our hydro plant. The starting cost of those is $1 million each. But anyhow. And the last thing I'm just going to mention that's coming up, which everybody's familiar with, it is the Bedford Middle School project. I will report publicly. I talked to Dave McCormick last week. Stop me if you're going to be shocked by this. He's behind schedule.
Oh, no.
You were kidding.
So you're going to have to decide what to do about that.
Yeah, because the last extension we gave was until the end of the year for the apartments. So
Now, I'll give him credit for being honest with me because but, and his words, I'll report this to you guys. He thinks the apartments could be up and ready around March. He thinks the hotel would be June. The deadlines were January and April, respectively.
Any reason for being behind schedule or just?
He's having trouble with the historic resources people approving his materials, I think. Supply chain. I'm not in the construction business. I don't really want to make excuses for him or accept explanations. I'm just kind of reporting the facts.
yeah, I mean, it's just something you're going to have to kind of deal with, you know. And Mr. Law, our attorneys can help you a lot with that because it's all legal agreements, you know.
I'd like to see it done. Basically, I will enforce what you put in place.
Yeah.
Did he get all the electrical stuff that we was talking about, like the meters and stuff like that?
Yeah, the electric's working. In fact, they were doing the ground level plumbing inspection today. It's just, it could be supply chain issues. I don't know. But like everybody else in this community, I'm just kind of tired of seeing it empty.
So that's all we kind of had on the agenda, you know. If y'all think that, if you got other things,
By the way, these are just the highlights. There's going to be several other things that.
Oh, there's a lot on the table.
Let me do a personal plug too. I would like to meet with each of you individually to kind of talk more about how staff does what we do and how we relate to that. And I'll reach out to you, and whenever it's convenient for you, just explain what I do for you. And basically, I work at your will and pleasure. And if you're happy with me, that makes me happy. And if you're not, that's okay. You just tell me. You get somebody who knows what they're doing.
And I'll offer to, even though I'm going away, I'm not gonna be here, but if you want, if you need some background, some back history on some stuff, just information, feel free to reach out to me. I'm still gonna be living here for at least the next year.
And he
I
cannot
gotta
leave-
work at least one more year.
he
but-
cannot leave it alone.
Before I go to the beach and hang out, so like I said, I'm not gonna, I told each one of you, I'm not gonna look over your shoulders, but if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so. Because I'm wanting you all to be successful, but at the same time, CG or Todd, whoever y'all do, whatever, the key is just there's a lot, believe me, I've been here 10 years and I still have to ask a lot of questions, so, but it's fun, it's a fun challenge. It's a lot of different things to think about, and learn about, and it'll keep you busy. But welcome and good luck to you.
Anybody want to
We're
start
counting on you.
tonight? Anybody want to start tonight?
Hang around tonight, you'll see Billy is one of the funny parts of the job now.
You got 2 more.
Yeah, I'm gonna adjourn the work session for, just real quick, and then we'll take a quick break.